Welcome everybody again. So I want to introduce also Neda Martinez, my co-director in the program. So we recorded the session for a number of folks who can't make it tonight. We're very excited to have Tyler, Tolu, Nikki, and Kari join us tonight. We do want to first just acknowledge today, Indigenous Peoples Day, not a day off at the new school. So we were busy in studio all day, actually working on some challenges related to Indigenous people's rights. But we're here tonight to talk about these particular humans and how they found each other. I'll start off and we'll ask Neda to join in. That it's an invitation to pause before we begin and respectively acknowledge the land on which the new school stands, where we're all standing. I'm standing on the unceded territory of the Lenape people on the island of Manhattan, a region that has and continues to be home to many Indigenous people and around the globe. Please remember, it's not intended to serve as resignation or acceptance. And if anything, our work here in the Impact Entrepreneurship Initiative, we can wrestle with the challenges of what those words mean, and are promising to live and work together and build relationship towards a just economy. So we feel both inspired, but the commitment and then those acknowledgements are not complete. Neda, do you want to add anything else?
And that, just to build on what you said, it gives us an opportunity to breathe and pause and be together in a moment of awareness as we work together in thoughtfulness and to model the world that we want to co-create together. Like Jen said, with reciprocal and just relations, I think we all want to ensure that we're working towards a healthy, respectful, and just climate financially, ecologically, relationally. And so let's honor our ancestors and think 7 generations ahead.
And also just to acknowledge all of the challenges going on in the world right now. It's been quite an intense number of weeks. I'm going to pause just on meeting hygiene. We've got 2 otter pilots. Are Allison or Judith here tonight? Or just their AIs? And to ask if anyone has an issue with having a transcript recording without the humans present. Okay, so with no objections to the welcoming the AIs along with the humans, we'll begin the conversation. So I'm going to first start with whom I met first, Tyler, and I want you to tell us a little bit of the story of how you started, and really what this session today is about is relationship, how you met the person that you're working with now. So how you met Tola, what's the status of the work today with your venture?
Sure. So hello, everyone. I'm Tyler. I recently graduated this past May with my Master's of Art in Fashion Studies. I am a fashion history buff. So my undergrad was in fashion design, and then I, pivoted into sort of like academic writing. So why did I start the venture? So I've been wearing glasses. My venture, or our venture, Tolu and I's venture, is a eyewear company, specifically designed around Black facial features and providing them with a sort of like end-to-end experience, with fitting them for frames that fit their features, and sort of empowering them with vision health knowledge. So when I initially applied to the Entrepreneurship Fellowship, I wanted to have like this entire like sustainable fashion company, and it was just very broad. And I think like one of the pillars of the fellowship is to kind of slim that down into something more pointed. And I just started to rethink kind of my own experience, still in the fashion realm, but something a little bit more, I guess, personal. And I love glasses. I feel like I have a pair of like sunglasses or frames for every occasion. So that's kind of where the venture pivoted to. I was working very hard, working full-time, aside from being a student full-time, then like pursuing this venture. And I just realized I needed help. I needed a lot of help. So I just started cold emailing. As a freelance writer, I am not afraid to just send a random person email and pitch an idea. So I started looking at all of the surrounding colleges. NYU has a great like bioengineering program.
Yeah, I'm on it.
So I sent the director an email. I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. If you know anyone who's interested, have them email me. And that's how I met Tolu. That was July of 22, I think.
Yep.
July of 22. And we kind of just been rocking ever since.
Yeah,
She is kind of like this, she's a great partner, very business oriented, keeps me on track. I feel like I'm very sort of like in the clouds sometimes, very creative, and she just brings me back down to earth. It's been great having her, part of the team and being able to be in partnership together as we sort of move forward. So yeah, Tolu, if there's anything else you wanted to add.
No, I think you covered everything. Jen, I think you had a question. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's just what it was like to receive that email. Like, this wasn't a scattershot, Tyler. You weren't just like randomly emailing people. You had deliberate humans in mind, and tell her what it was like to receive that.
Yeah, the director of our program. Oh, sorry. Hi, I'm Tolu. I recently graduated from NYU with my degree in biotechnology and entrepreneurship. And the email I got from my director was basically from Tyler saying, like, I'm looking to do sustainable materials for eyewear. And I emailed her back and I was like, I can't offer you engineering experience, but I can offer project management experience. So that's how I kind of got in there. And also as a long-term eyewear user of many years, like the mission and the vision of the at least the initial idea like really spoke to me. So we've been working very closely ever since. Initially just with research and such, and now more developing what the future of the brand looks like. And it's been really exciting.
Amazing. And so what made you want to respond to that initial email? What was it?
I was like the actual like text, I could tell that Tyler was already like very passionate about the idea. So I was just excited to be in the same room with someone who was already like had like the vision and the motivation to actually see this all the way through and not just like kind of just doing this for fun or like Tyler's a very motivated person. So you could kind of get that vibe through the email already. So I was already drawn and ready to, really hop on with the venture.
All right, save that email. It's going to be in the origin stories, which people sometimes even just fabricate to have such great origin stories. All right. Yeah. Nikki, same thing. And now I had you both as fellow, Tyler was a fellow, graduated. Nikki, you're a second-year fellow, and Kari as well was a fellow. So, but tell us where your idea originated and how it's morphed as you've started, how you two decided to pair up.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Nikki. Like Jen said, I'm a social impact entrepreneurship fellow, second year, also second year MFA design and technology student. Similar to Tyler, so I kind of entered the fellowship with this concept of really wanting to bridge the information gap in reproductive health. And that mostly was born out of just my own frustrations as being a woman in the healthcare system and feeling like every time I went, to my gynecologist, I was just constantly surprised with news and almost learning more from my fellow friends and family. And so I came to the fellowship with that, and it definitely has evolved. Initially, I was focused more on the concept of like a smart tampon or smart like menstrual pad or cup that had biosensors like built in that could track like fertility indicators. And now with the help of Kari, we've narrowed it down more to really focusing on the data that menstrual blood contains that's often overlooked, that new research is highlighting. So biomarkers related to your fertility, but not only that, but also things like HPV, could be diabetes. And so like Tyler, I had this concept, but I needed help with it. My brother also has a startup, and he always says 100%, 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. And so when Kari and I met in the fellowship, she also had a background in health and care. I think we both had similar frustrations, and I can confidently say that she truly balances me and brings everything to the table that I may not have. And so it's been a wonderful union. And Kari, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Sure. Like, hi everyone, I'm Kari, second year fellow, second year TD, Transdisciplinary Design Program. And I guess like I resonate with everything that Nikki said, and everyone has said so far. I guess we both had like this passion around healthcare and the whole care industry that at some point we were like super bothered about. And it was like, okay, is it time for us to do something or even try to do something? And Nick invited me to participate, which was amazing. And it's been a wonderful experience. We have gone through a lot of different routes through this path. So I'm very happy that I could say going through thick and thin together has so much learning, and it's been an amazing opportunity to kind of like come together with ideas, but like mostly to collaborate and learn how to do that and love each other in that process. Yeah.
Whoa, amazing. All right. So I'll say from my perspective, being in the startup ecosystem in quotation marks for so many years in New York and watching it evolve, both of your teams kind of hit a pattern that the folks that are downstream like to see, those running incubators, accelerators, giving early stage first check grants. They like it when the idea moves from one person to at least two, to the sense of the broader ecosystem. That's a sign that whatever the idea is at least attracted one other human being, which is better than not attracting any. And we sometimes fight against this in the ecosystem, that not every startup has to have a co-founder. Not all folks that come into our program, usually deeply representing some kind of community relationship, need to find a co-founder in the way the classic tech startup does. But here we have two teams that did this, and you both had summer experiences where you were invited into some kind of program. Maybe we go with Nikki and Kari first and tell us what was the summer program all about and where you are now with it.
Sorry, guys, the lights went out on me.
Oh, no.
I'm back. I'm so sorry, Jen. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just tell us about. I was talking about how these teams have. Both of you have applied and got into summer programs and are. One. I think one was. We'll have to get the details, and I think folks on these calls often want to get the details. Like, did you get any money? What kind of support was it? You can give honest feedback. I think it won't affect any future students if we give feedback. Like, was it useful? Did you get a lot out of it? Was it challenging? Did it feel rote? Did what you learned feel complementary to the program, or was it in friction, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the help of Jen, she pointed us in the direction of this grant application and almost like mini incubator program. It was called VentureWell. And I don't know, I can't speak for Gadi, but I personally definitely underestimated it. I knew it was a nice amount of money. It was $5,000 grant. And it was definitely a hefty application process. So anyone who is applying to grants in the future, make sure you plan ahead, because you need to get a lot of, recommendations and documents in order. But that being said, we learned so much. So obviously the money is extremely helpful to move forward in terms of like proof of concept and prototyping and bringing on additional help. But this grant in particular with VentureWell came with like a 3-day workshop, and it was very much like an accelerator process, and it was incredibly helpful, A, for the network because it was biotech focused, and B, just the resources and kind of filling in the gaps that as a new startup, you don't know what you don't know. And that was, I think, a very helpful experience. Kari, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I guess also we have a lot of anxiety of how to move forward and what it's coming next. So we have this idea, and it was like, okay, we have been doing some work already, but like, how do we make this happen in the real world? And that workshop not just like help us somehow to building upon like the process, but as well as like asking some questions around, are we actually sure about what we are doing right now? Like, do we have what you need? Or do we believe that we have what it's needed to keep going on this? And that was extremely helpful because it was a very reflexive process where like first we have to really go deep inside and say, okay, we are committed to do this. Now that we can just like get rid of that anxiety, we can see how we can like start iterating kind of like with the ideation process and see, okay, how are we going to do prototyping? We learn a lot of customer discovery and how and where we should be focusing our energy next. And I think like that was incredibly amazing. And at the same time, we had to travel to Boston together. So in terms of like our relationship, it was incredibly to see if we can do well. It was like either we got like stronger after this or we break up this relationship because you never know what can happen when you're traveling with someone that we knew each other, but like not at the deep level. And we had to face a lot of like different kind of like absurd type of things that happen. And it was like, okay, so thinking how do we deal with those stuff also help us to see if we have like any kind of different situation in this working relationship, how could that go on in the future? I don't know, Nikki, if you have the same feelings, but like I think that was great in terms of how we could get closer.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference in working together in the classroom and then working together in the real world. And I think that was something that was on our minds. And it was, confidence inducing that we were able to kind of like get stronger from it. And like Gadi said, the experience overall was very validating of our concept, which was, confidence goes a long way. And there was one more thing. Oh, it really helped us refine our value proposition, and really focus on how are we going to deliver the data that's in menstrual blood to our customers, and how are we going to ensure it's secure.
Okay. I'm going to now bounce to Tolu and Tyler. You were in a program. I think you took advantage of of one of NYU's many opportunities for the summer. So tell us about what that was like, and and is this resonating, these same questions and stories?
For sure. We did the NYU boot camp and the sprint. I believe the boot camp was in April, and then the sprint was, right after graduation, so in May or June, or like bridging the gap between the two. So the two programs are really great in helping us kind of flesh out the business thesis and kind of the business model canvas for then Renee Lamar Optics and now Indira Eyewear. So I feel like a lot of the time was spent like, interrogating the different hypotheses that we had for the different sections of the business model canvas, especially during the sprint, being that the mornings were more structured as, kind of lectures and, interactive experiences, and the afternoons were kind of the time that you had to actually get out and interview people to actually test those various sections of your business model canvas. And I feel like through that, we were given some directions that kind of prompted us to expand our business thesis. And then at the end, we figured out that like that expansion didn't actually serve us in the long run. So we actually refocused and readjusted for how we're going to move forward. But besides that, I think we got a lot of, like Carrie and Nicolette, we also developed an actual in-person relationship because a lot of our initial experiences were over Zoom. So the sprint was actually our first time like actually meeting each other in person, and then we were in person for like a whole week and a half, if not longer. So I think overall it was really beneficial for actually fleshing out like what the next step was for us, as well as giving us access to a whole network of mentors and coaches, and also other founders at NYU, whether they actually saw their venture to fruition or if they're still kind of figuring things out in like the pond before actual like launch. Tyler, do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, like NYU, I think it helped, of course, like having both institutions' resources and being able to like create community at both schools. I will say that like, yeah, that 2-week intensive was intense for sure, for sure. And it was great to kind of like, of course, like meet Tolu in person. Like it's crazy because we had almost been working together for like a year before I like saw her in person, um, which was crazy. But I think it kind of spoke to both of our passion for the venture, and kind of forced us to get out of our shell, and get out and talk to people, which was something that like I have never really been comfortable with. Like I can send an email, but like you want me to go to a random person in Washington Square Park, I don't know about all that. So it definitely forced us to get out of our shell and kind of test these hypotheses and, you know, reiterate and all of that. It was definitely rigorous, which I definitely appreciated, and set us on a path forward to, you know, like Tolu said, refining our business model canvas and our business thesis, but then also, you know, kind of taking away a little bit of the overthinking and the anxiety around prototyping for an actual like physical product. Yeah.
I guess the next question I want to ask, and then I want to open it up to everybody. And this is just more because I know histories and the kinds of questions I get all the time from students applying to this program and who are here. Is some of you had day jobs while you were in school or during the summers while you were also doing these programs? So you were doing all of it, maybe still are. So Tyler, starting with you, when you were graduated last spring, what's your relationship to getting a job and being in the world? And do you just quit everything and work on the startup? Like, how does that work for you?
Absolutely not. I still had to eat. So I will be super candid and very honest with you. You know, I don't come from a very privileged background. I put myself through undergrad and put myself through this master's degree. So I had to work. I worked full time, and I also worked, you know, as a student full time, and then like self-funded these this venture. And then, you know, I got a partner, a co-founder, and then we've both been, you know, applying for grants and then receiving grants from the new school, receiving grants from NYU. So it's definitely helped us, like these micro grants, to kind of put forth some sort of energy and product, and results as we iterate. But I would definitely tell you not to drop it all. Like you, like, you know, depending on your background and how you can support yourself, like it, you know, that I guess makes a difference of if you can just drop everything and just go full force into your venture. For me, I was not that lucky. Yeah, Tola and I both like supported ourselves through our degrees, and you know, we're still self-funding this on top of the grants that we have. But I think like if you really want it, you'll go after it. And there have been times where, you know, like during the boot camp in April, I really like, I want this venture to happen. I want it to happen for, you know, people who look like me, who've been shut out of this industry just because they don't have European features. I want it to happen for the culture. And when I was doing the boot camp, I was in Paris, which was 6 hours ahead. And I was up until midnight working on this boot camp with Tolu, while it was only like, what, like 6 p.m. over there. So you have to put in the work and kind of show your dedication in some way. And for me, that meant, you know, funding my education and then also funding this venture. So definitely don't quit your job. Don't quit your day job. Don't do it.
Yeah, same. Specifically during the sprint, it was like one of the hardest 2-week periods of my life, just because it was like I work like 9 to 6 in like a regular week when it's no school, no boot camp. But the boot camp, because it ran from, you know, 8:30 to like technically 5:30, and then you had extra work, you kind of have to like figure out how to manage your time in a way that prioritizes the things that you need to take care of. So that did mean like, you know, sacrificing sleep, or, you know, like ordering out, or, you know, figuring out how to feed yourself for the duration of the pinch period. But I feel like it's worth it, especially because as you're working your day job, you kind of realize you're like, oh gosh, I'm still doing the same thing every day. I wish I could just put all of my energy into the thing I want to put my energy into. So it's been like motivating in a interesting way.
All right. I don't know if maybe I won't put my current students on the spot. Might be a touchy subject, but tell us how you're thinking about like balancing, or there's no such thing. Is there such a thing as balancing your time with this stuff?
I think we're fine. We're making the time is what I'll say, because we're so passionate about it. I'm working part-time right now. Kadi is also juggling multiple jobs, I think, Kadi. Yeah. Over the summer, we were also both working, and I totally agree with both of you. Our workshop was only 3 days, but it was exhausting, like 9 to 6. Like we literally would go back to the hotel and pass out. But now, we're in our second year, and Kadi and I were just talking and saying it's only October, and we feel like it's the end of the year already. It's just been so intense, because we're also juggling, the startup, but we're making the time. Like if you see our schedules, it's like, okay, I have an hour here, I have an hour there. And that's just how we do it, little by little, day by day, because there's really no other way. I mean, it's school, and yeah, you do what you can.
Okay. I do want to open it up if we do have folks online with questions. We'll start with Nina.
Hi, I'm class of 2020, Media Studies. Hi, Professor Martinez. She was my professor for 2, 3 classes, I think. First of all, I want to say how impressed I am with all the women.
Oh, I think her sound went out.
Oh, Nina. Unless you're going for a wonderful pause. Very well done. I'm impressed with all the women. All right.
Hi, could I start talking in the meantime? Like I have a few questions.
Sure, who's there? Tell us your name.
I'm Ashante. I'm a BAFA in BFA photography and BA journalism and design. And I found it very interesting to hear Tyler and what's her name? Sorry.
Tyler and Tolu?
Tolu, yep.
Tolu talk. I love what you guys had to say about your experiences and in your journey together. I just had a question about, you guys were bringing up business thesis. Is there any way you could break down some of the important aspects in building your business thesis?
Yeah, at the boot camp and the sprint, that was like the first thing that had us do every day. And every day was just like interrogating, like basically in a sentence, how would you summarize your venture? So our business thesis went through countless iterations.
It changed every day, I swear. Like every single day. Because sometimes it feels like you're getting like conflicting advice. And I think like, I don't mean to cut you off. So I'm sorry. But like I think like with our business thesis, like Tolu said, like it's just like, how would you describe your business in like 1 to 2 sentences, 3 at the most. And like it can't be too wordy, it has to be concise, it has to be precise, and like explain everything that you want to convey to possible investors, but then also to your potential customers. And even like if you're explaining your venture to someone on the subway, right? So I think like with the business venture or the business thesis, you're always like interrogating it in a way that like is still clear, but also like conveys what you wanted to convey in the face of like all of this, advice and things like that. So you, like with your business thesis, us changing it every day doesn't necessarily mean that we're changing the venture up every day. Just like, how do I want to convey this in a way that's clear, but also is, aligns with the moral of the story or the moral of the venture. And sometimes we would have to just stick to our guns, be like, this is what we want to say. Yep. So next thing, next, like, you know what I'm saying? You just kind of have to be confident enough in your idea to be like, I heard what you said, but we like this. And I think like, when you are learning from professional insiders and people who want to see you win, they respect it. They're just like, okay, I said what I needed to say. You took the advice. But then like, if this is what your business thesis is going to say, be able to prove this in your experiments and your iterations. Like, tell me why you're going to keep it this way and make it make sense. Because if it doesn't make sense, you kind of just for lack of a better word, you kind of look like a jackass. So like you just need to make it make sense.
I like how you said it, like you have to prove it to them, but prove it to yourself most of all.
Yeah.
Got it.
And like the key like aspects is of the business thesis is just saying what your business is, who you're serving, and what value does it give to your target demographic. And for that changed, our target demo changed like initially because we received advice to kind of like see what's out there. But through testing and through the interviews, we're able to essentially hyper focus our venture to kind of target the people that we started with anyway. But we were able to go on the journey to actually prove and validate what the value of the venture will be, even though it might not be initially evident to everybody in like that you're presenting it to. And like Tyler said, you have to like have the data to back it up.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Jen, and we have a question. Nina wrote it, but Nina, do you want to see if your audio works?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Oh no, it's stopped again for some reason. Okay, sorry, Nina. We'll just read your question. So the question from Nina is, what was the biggest obstacle in legal matters, particularly the protection of data on women's health? Like, what's like the biggest obstacle there?
Yeah, so right now I would say that the biggest obstacle in general has been developing a proof of concept with a biomedical engineer because neither of us are engineers. And so the hunt for one was a major challenge, and we just, happily brought someone on. But in terms of data privacy and data management, that's something that we're also going to tackle with a data scientist. It's very important to us that people feel comfortable, with the knowledge that like their data cannot even be accessed by us. It's only between them and the lab that ultimately tests the menstrual blood. So it continues to be a big challenge. I'm confident we'll tackle it, but it's definitely something that we plan to bring on with expertise through a data scientist.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Nick is saying. For some reason, like thinking of like who are gonna bring to the team to help us developing this part of the testing, it also entangles other different questions around intellectual property, like RBS, and how we're gonna be really conscious or like this research will be not just the bring and best outcome possible, but also it's gonna be very human focused and protective of data. And I guess at some point, like we have been having conversations and different interviews with different professionals around not just engineers, but also doctors or nurses that can give us a wider perspective of what could be our blind spots and our biases, because one question somehow opens a world of new different questions that at some point it's like, okay, we need to be very mindful and aware of these. So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm observing, and I want to open it up to Neda too, who's had two of you as students, but hasn't, I don't think, spent as much time with Tyler or Tolu. But both of these teams are making something physical, tangible. So much of digital entrepreneurship has been so digital, especially over COVID timeframe. It's all these like hacking tools, apps and app stores, mental health apps, and you've all focused on something that's harder, something that you have to physically make. So how have you dealt with that? Getting access to funds, prototyping, like how does that change how you think and, as they say in the startup game, ideate and iterate when you're not just moving pixels or you can't just no code your way through it?
Yeah, for Tyler and me, we with the sprint we received some essentially some reimbursement funds, about $500 for prototyping, and we put that towards just some like model magic and a lot of like physical things that we can actually, use to see what, Tyler sketches will look like in a physical space, although it might not actually, work, but we can see what it looks like, at least in like 3D space. And we have to actually, schedule time and, create a workspace. Additionally, because we're working with eyewear, we, under advisement from one of our coaches at the NYU eLab, we bought existing eyewear and just like hacked them up and then tried to piece them together again just to get like a looks like prototype, and are now trying to get into like a works like prototype, just to get Tyler sketches and designs off of the paper and actually into 3D space.
Yeah. And I think like with prototyping and just like everything about making a physical product, there's a lot of anxiety there of like, well, it needs to be perfect. In my head, that's what I was thinking. I was like, it needs to be perfect if I'm just going to start and like make stuff because I don't want to waste my money. We have like what 10 pairs of random glasses that we found from like a street vendor that have just been chopped to bits. And we've just been putting them back together, trying to make like Tolu said, this like looks like, works like, feels like situation, and testing them on different nose bridges and on different like temple lengths and things like that, just to kind of get initial reactions from community members, and even ourselves. Like Tolu and I have very different facial features, so I barely have a nose bridge, so me trying on a pair, I'm like, this would not work for someone who has a facial, like a nose shape like mine. Like it wouldn't work for me, but it might work for you. So like it helps in that way to kind of divorce from this idea of perfectionism when you're just trying to get something out there and just kind of play with it. And I think like advice from both the Parsons community and the NYU was just like, stop trying to like create your something that you'll sell right away. Like you're not going to sell these. You just need to see what it looks like, how, the process of making it. So it's something that we're still working on. Like Tolu said, like we've worked on the looks like, and now we're working on the it works like. So taking that from this like 3D hacked model to something that maybe we make on the computer and be able to make it into like this cool vector and see what it looks like that way, and then tackling the actual like first prototype with an industrial designer. That's kind of our next step.
I guess I could say that for us it's been a lot of like balancing this idea of like we're not going to be marrying our own ideas because like we really love them, but then we need to hold space for other things or allow other things to happen. Nikki had like a brilliant idea in the beginning, but then through the process we realized that we might not just creating a product but also a service, and trying to like mapping that workflow and all the things that are around that just make us realize that we need to go back and forth in doing that. I don't know, Nikki, what do you feel?
Yeah, and this our product was always going to be some sort of at-home kit, but initially we were focused on really like recreating the menstrual pad, the tampon, using more biodegradable materials like a blend of algae and cotton, for example. Algae is also antimicrobial. And so our prototypes were more experimental materials. And including, at one point we stuck a moisture capacitive sensor just to see like, can we measure volume and flow? And then through VentureWell, we really honed in on, okay, actually what we want to provide is the service, not the new like menstrual product or period product. And so that's when we were like, okay, it's time to partner with a lab and really get like the biochemical process of like, okay, if you bleed onto this, it will show XYZ colors and ultimately indicate what biomarkers are existing. And we're not here to diagnose anyone by any means. We're just here to provide you consistent personal data that you are releasing monthly anyway, and just discarding, frankly. Instead of going to the gynecologist once a year, now you have a history that you can kind of offer that snapshot, especially for those difficult to diagnose conditions like endometriosis, like menopause. And so that proof of concept and prototype is now beginning with the biomedical engineer that we brought on board. And so things constantly evolve and change, and it can be frustrating in terms of timeline, but it has to be done right. And right now, as we apply for more grants, we don't have our personal proof of concept, but what are we supplying it with? Significant research on like the biomarkers that do exist in menstrual blood, research behind, the gap in just access to reproductive health, and how like an at-home kit can be a solution to that. And, I forgot my third point, but yeah, basically backing up our grants with as much like research and data as possible in lieu of the proof of concept that we have.
Okay.
Can I
I'll
ask?
keep, yeah, go Nate.
So in this phase where everything seems so important at the same time, how do you balance these various aspects of work into a priority list? Like how do you determine in any given moment like what you're going to focus on? How do you spread your work? Well, does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I can go ahead and start. I think, for one, having a project manager as a co-founder definitely helped in that regard. I will also say that I think for us, we kind of just start with goals. Like we met last week, I think, like last Sunday, and hey, Q4 is Q4. What are the goals? Like, what would we like to see? And kind of going through it that way, we see like what sort of ideas and hopes we have for the venture. It keeps us motivated. It keeps us, sort of optimistic about what we can accomplish, and then is a challenge for us to accomplish these things. And I think like kind of bouncing ideas off of each other in terms of like, okay, let's be realistic. Let's let's put the delusion in the back seat and say like, okay, by this time we can have this done, and just come to an agreement on that. Because there's definitely a, I guess a part of like where you have to be super realistic about what you can accomplish. You can still be optimistic. Of course, we want you to remain like motivated on your goals, but I think for us, it feels better when we set realistic goals and we accomplish them rather than just like super far out, like you're not going to reach 1,000 followers on Instagram by January 1st. Like, sure, that'd be great if you could, but let's be realistic and set realistic goals on how we get there. And I think, like I said before, like having a co-founder whose background is in project management, helps keep us down to earth on the things that we want to accomplish, and gets us there realistically.
And just to piggyback on that, I also think that the way that we kind of run our weekly meetings, especially given that Tyler has a more creative and, design focused mentality, and I have more of like, I don't know, like project management, book things, reading legal, like trying to decode legalese, like having like two distinct backgrounds kind of helps us, prioritize and it gives us an opportunity to like kind of take ownership of different aspects. And then we both go do our legwork, and then we come back to the table and either discuss how we feel as, co-founders in this venture, how we feel about, the progress we've made, and if we need to pivot, or, trusting that the person that you're working with, has the venture's best interest at heart. So whatever they, come to the table with, you just like, you look at it, but then you trust that the necessary work has been done on the back end to make sure that it is actually something that you would also be proud to co-sign on.
Yeah, I think Kari and I are pretty aligned that, as a biotech startup, very, very early stage biotech startup, our priorities right now are funding and prototyping. And so that's what we kind of build our schedule off of. But like Tyler and Tolu said, like we're constantly communicating and setting up, if not weekly, bi-weekly meetings or bi-monthly meetings, so that we are on the same page and adjusting as needed. Kari's definitely more experienced in proposal and grant writing than I am, and that's been just a huge help in kind of like pushing us forward. And it is about balancing like our strengths with also our time and like what we can execute and like triaging, to be honest.
Yeah, I think like now having like less time available, I guess Nikki has brought like this great opportunity to actually see what are our strengths and how could we use them. So she's very great at just like networking and talking to people. And I think like more kind of like into the organization, kind of like trying to follow up into things or setbacks that we have in a road that are kind of like not big things, but are annoying because you have to be on them. So we have tried to balance that as much as we can. And also we have learned somehow that there are moments where you have to set boundaries, either with our own work or the other things that we are doing, and definitely not forget to bring kind and compassion, because if we're burnt out or really, really in a very bad mood, because sometimes things are hard, as much as we wanted to work and move forward with things, that's not gonna be great at all. So it's been a lot of that learning and see how we can combine our rhythms to get the best out of that.
Yay. I so appreciate this. This is like the perfect description of exercising your power as a way to do mutual care, rather than, not to make fun of crystals and healing self-care, but that we sometimes ask, especially female entrepreneurs, about how are you getting to balance? And all you're talking about is how you're kind of setting these boundaries, caring for each other, not overwhelming each other with expectations. So I'm so happy we have this on record. That, and Tyler, your amazing answer with like, how do you deal with all this conflicting advice, which a lot of these programs, when you go out into the startup ecosystem, you're bombarded with expertise that gives you contrary advice, and you just like in your body held your ground and said, I think we know what we're doing when it comes to the segment we're targeting.
Yeah, and I think too, it's just like, I don't know, as Black founders doing something that is not only like medical and medically necessary, it's culturally necessary. Like both Tolu and I have our own sort of like cultural experiences with eyewear, not being able to find stuff for our features, but then also like that is fatiguing in and of itself. Like every time I go to the eye doctor, I have a horrible experience. I can't find anything for my face. I don't want to go to the eye doctor then. There are people that we talked to that hadn't been to the eye doctor. I think one of the worst numbers I heard was like 5 years. You need to get your eyes checked. And, I think just like medical health, vision health in general for Black people, like it is empowering. So, like we definitely have to stand our ground when it comes to like how we want to approach, our community, as Black women, but then also how we want this venture to show up in the medical space, because it is just as much as it is medically necessary, like it's culturally necessary to kind of like change perception around like empowerment when it comes to, the medical industry and, the vision health industry. So yeah, you definitely have to, remain ambitious and be coachable, especially in the startup space, but you have to kind of stand your ground, like I said.
Yeah. Amazing. Any other questions from the audience? And I can open it up if you have questions for each other, since the two of you are meeting the other two of you tonight.
Yeah, I have a question for Nicolette and Kari. I was curious how you made the step into bringing, another partner into your venture, or just at least another brain into your idea. So how was the search for finding, your biomedical engineer? And also, I know you like it's you recently brought them on the board, but like how is it? How was setting that relationship up, and where do you see it going aside from partnership in the long run?
It was super hard because that's just not a community that we have access to historically. My background is international relations. Kadi's background is storytelling, among other things. And so for me, it was like, oh man, how do I find this like pond of people? And actually, initially, we reached out to the heads of biomedical departments at universities, and we actually got no response, which was very demoralizing, but probably for the best, because the more we spoke to people, the more we learned that actually would have been very difficult to retain our IP had we used someone from a university. And so then we started asking our own network internally and just like, hey, like, do you know any biomedical engineers or biochemical engineer? Like, it's pretty broad. And so by doing that, actually is how we found our current engineer. A classmate of mine went to UNC, and turns out Raleigh, North Carolina is a huge biotech hub. I didn't know that. Yeah. And so she had a classmate who she just raved about, a former classmate. And so she connected us. And honestly, it's also a bit of luck because he happens to be working on the more consulting side of biotech, does not have any like work restrictions externally. A lot of these engineers, they can't actually like work outside of their company for like their own internal IP purposes. So he didn't have any of those restrictions, and he's likely, you know, applying to medical school in the next few years. And so he wants to build this kind of like entrepreneurial background in something like health related, so like menstrual blood. So really the stars aligned for us. On top of that, obviously we had to meet him and like enjoy his company because you know it's going to be a lot of kind of working together, because he really will be like developing our proof of concept. Now that we have him on board, it really is night and day, because for example, like he recently provided us like an outline, like a protocol outline, budget, and it just kind of really grounded everything in terms of like the process and the timeline, and it made everything 1,000 million times more concrete and real. So it really has been a game changer for us. Kari, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, definitely what you said. I guess it was a leap of faith to say, okay, let's give him a try and see how things goes. But it was very helpful that he was so into this project and really wanted to participate, because we have seen concretely the work that he has been doing. So that gave us also an opportunity to see beyond what we were thinking of in the beginning. Like, we want him to do X, Y, and Z, but then he's also been proposing a lot of things, and that's been enriching our process, and we hope it will go great. But now he's in North Carolina, so definitely we are looking forward to meet him in person.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Likewise for you two, are you planning on bringing on additional help? An industrial designer, maybe?
Yeah, we're currently courting an industrial designer to see what the vibe is, because we've kind of reached out and tried to partner with other people in the past in like a project capacity, and either they've not produced the work in a way that like aligns with the vision of what we wanted, or they realized that we were, you know, just two, you know, 20 somethings trying to start a business and like kind of ghosted us. So we're kind of back at like it's square two, like trying to see if like this person will actually be viable. And also I think that especially in the city, there's so many artists and so many industrial designers that like we will be able to, I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to find an industrial designer to kind of help us through. And if worst comes to worst, YouTube University is always available. So at least for our first few prototypes, if it has to be bootstrapped, then we can, you know, together figure that out, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, looking at the industrial designer, and I think too, like, I am not opposed to like like Tolu said, hopping on YouTube and learning how to do something myself, especially when it comes to just like 3D rendering or something like that. Like having a design, like a fashion design background, like I'm used to working with fabric, but I can figure out how to work with, you know, with bioplastics if I need to. If it gets, you know, a little too out of hand, I'm not afraid to kind of like obviously we've gotten our hands dirty thus far with, breaking things apart. So yeah, I feel like we're very optimistic about who we're, like Tolu said, who we're courting. I like that phrase.
I have a quick follow-up. How are you guys balancing, the grants? So like, let's say like you have a grant and then maybe it finishes and then you're applying to more grants, like that kind of like tension between like funds and no funds,
Yeah.
like progressing the work.
I think you kind of just have to figure out where money is needed, right? Like for the prototyping, like we knew that the business thesis is here. Now we have to start making things. Like I will sit on the computer and research something at like nauseam before I like start it. And I think like having Tolu like join the team and us being in this partnership, she's just like, let's just do it. Like, let's just figure it out. And yeah, so when it came to prototyping, we knew that we needed the funds for that. But when it came to like me doing a sketch, like I don't need Adobe Illustrator. I can just get a sketchbook and kind of do it that way. In terms of, like figuring out like, do I want to hire someone to do my social media, or do I want to figure out how to do it myself, or certain subscriptions to things, like that's just a bigger conversation. And I don't know, I feel like always talking about finances, especially in terms of entrepreneurship, gets uncomfortable. But it's just like, if we're going to be serious about this, like we have to have this uncomfortable conversation and figure out, like Nada asked, like, what are the priorities for right now? Like, do I need to pay for a Google ad? And I don't even have a logo yet. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you have to figure out those priorities. And then we're constantly looking at what grants are out there, seeing like what we qualify for, seeing what like aligns with our mission vision. And then I think just coming from Parsons, like I think we were just like trained to really lean in to our community, like staying in contact with them. And like from my community members, from Tolu's community members, they're like, hey, are you still working on those glasses? I'm ready for those to hit the market. And we're like, yeah, just give us a second, So they're ready to invest. And I think like keeping those relationships alive, and kind of building those and fostering those are, motivators for us, even, when money is low and when we have to wait for reimbursement on prototyping funds. So yeah, Tolu, you want to add anything?
Yeah, like Tyler said, like at the very beginning, this is mostly self-funded with some reimbursements. So like right now, Tyler's paying for that Adobe Illustrator subscription, and we need it so we can get our brand kit up and running and actually, like finalized, as opposed to just what's in Canva. We're applying for like our LLC, and I'm ready to, I have the funds set aside and I'm gonna, just put it in there, because at the end of the day, like the small investments now will pay off in the long run. Because like, especially because it's necessary and financially necessary to do these things right now. So we're doing what has to happen so we can, actually make it to the next step, where we can actually like eventually, apply to those other grants and actually be more viable and, marketable to those other grants that we're not, hearing about, or essentially just being, like not even able to enter the room into those grants, to be in like the discussions about those, to be eligible for those at least. I hope that answers the question.
It was a long-winded answer. I hope
Yep.
hope you got what you needed.
Nada, do you want to add anything?
Well, I do think that at some point we might want to consider continuing this conversation and really think about work made for hire and legal concepts, and just really be prepared for that next phase, at least initially, and what those kind of looks like to protect your IP. So we'd love to continue to speak with you offline to see how we can go deeper on this conversation, because I feel it's deeply substantive to we've learned a lot about this collaboration and discovery process, but then a little bit of things to consider, things to be mindful of as more partners enter and as money enters. Things kind of shift in those power dynamics, and so how we want to treat our people and how do you want to treat yourselves.
For sure.
Yeah. And I just want to point out that Fearless Fund conversation in the chat. It's a major issue. There's a lawsuit from the same folks that went after affirmative action to go after Fearless Fund and to block giving funds to Black female founders. It's very specific. It's going to the appellate courts right now. So entrepreneurship just isn't about staying out of politics and being in the market and doing something to create a new world. It's also advocating for the structures that keep in place an industry that continues by count to give 98% of the money to Caucasian humans and so little amount of money to Black and Latina founders. And this is just it's a major issue. So we can't just assume this is outside of politics.
For sure.
Okay, I don't want to end on that sad note because this has been so warm and generative and connected and human. And I'm so happy to have so many of the things you said recorded because I think it's going to be useful. We're going to put this on the syllabus even because there's just so many questions you answer of just like, well, how do you? First time I came to the new school, this was the big question: how do I find somebody? I'm so in my own head. And you've all demonstrated how you do that, and it was through intention and energy in an email and warmth. And I just really appreciate all of you for sharing.
Yeah. And vulnerability, I'll say too. Like I had to really get over my pride to be like, okay, let me ask somebody for help. So it definitely takes a vulnerable and accountable person and partner to like get stuff moving off the ground. Because like I said before, like I was just researching day and night, like how can I do this as, a one-woman team? And I'm just like, I don't need to be a one-woman team. I need someone to help me. So vulnerability, add that to the list for sure.
Yeah, I'd say my biggest lesson is just ask. Most people want to help, whether it's some little way or a big way, like just ask, just try it. It's incredibly scary, but more often than not, the results are worth it.
For sure. And a lot of starters are startups or, startup founders, we're all in the same boat. We don't know what we're really doing, but we're trying
we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah. And I think like being, in the fellowship, but then also being at NYU, there are so many founders who are just like, yeah, I was thinking about this when you were talking about XYZ. I know this person, here's their email, maybe you could try this in one of your experiments. Like people in this space are very helpful. So it's really just a matter of like, being in the space, one, and then two, being willing to take this feedback and take these resources and give your own. Like there are people from NYU, they're way ahead of the game. And, for some things they get stumped. Like everyone, comes to that point where it's just like, I don't know what to do. And then you just offer that help. So. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all a process. It's not going to happen overnight.
True.
Yeah, and I guess there is also like a lot of moments where you are unsure of things and where you think like, okay, I'm gonna make a mistake or this is gonna fail somehow. And then it's like, okay, how could you be humble enough to just like let go of that and keep moving forward and assume that that could be a very generative process that you could learn or pivot somewhere else? And that's really hard because you really love your ideas and what you wanted to do. And it's like, you don't like, I think we're not prepared to accept that we could fail and things can be hard and difficult at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
They're afraid of
Yeah.
failure, like in this. I'm sorry, Jen, if you're trying to
Go,
end it.
Tyler. No, go. We're not
I'm
trying
sorry
to
if I'm holding everybody up. But yeah, like I wouldn't be afraid to fail. I think like when I first, because like I said before, like I don't have a background in entrepreneurship. So like when I thought of this idea of like having this sustainable fashion house, like this huge, like audacious goal, I was researching. And then I found the program, put together this presentation to get into the fellowship. And then like once it came down to it, I'm like, it's still not perfect yet. Like, how do I perfect it before I launch it? And I remember like both Jen, Nada, Michelle, Sean, they were all like, it's never gonna be perfect. So how about you just try it? And like like everyone's saying, like you just have to be vulnerable enough and kind of just like give yourself enough grace to just like, I have researched everything I need to. How can I put together all my knowledge into something that makes sense and just iterate and change as I go along? Because I feel like a lot of people will just spend hours online and will never do anything from it. Keep pushing it back, keep pushing it back. Just launch it and just see. You have the resources. You have people in your community that you can lean on. Like, and it's New York. I feel like everyone's always trying to do something to help someone else in terms of like creativity, business, whatever. Someone's there to give you advice to how to perfect it along the way, at least.
Just to build off of what you're saying, Tyler, we're both doing novel things. And with novelty, you have to piece together the support that you can. We were just, Kari and Jen and I were speaking a few weeks ago and saying, for example, like the at-home colonoscopy kits now, like that's something that we can kind of bring to the table in support of like our at-home period kits. Is it menstrual blood? No, but it's a similar concept. And so when you're doing novel things, you can do all the research you want, and you're never going to find the exact same thing, but you can find things, parallel that support it. And I think that people really underestimate that, but it's also a very powerful kind of like tool to get your potential users or clients like understand what you're doing and the value that it can bring. So yeah.
I fully agree with that. I feel like a lot of our initial and like, or at least my first task, coming on as just a PM, was just, analyzing what other people do and how they produce eyewear, whether it be, like the more accessible ones like Zenny, all the way up to like, the bespoke, small batch eyewear. So it's really important to look at, the people that are doing things similar to like where you want to end up, to kind of like lay out the footsteps of where you're going to go in the long run.
Yeah. And we talked to so many people this summer, like from like eyewear users to eye doctors to people who just have, like eyewear shops and how they curated their whole collection. It's just like what was important to them, what was missing, what were their clients saying, like how did they form these relationships? So it's just like there are people who are like willing and like eager to talk to you, especially when you're saying like, hey, I noticed this was a problem with this person and someone down the block. Are you having the same problem? And they're like, oh my gosh, yes. And they will talk to you for hours. I feel like we were in, I can't remember, Salima.
Yeah,
Salima and love, I can't remember his name, love him, but we were in there for almost like an hour and a half. And just like going over things that he had seen and, like industry, things that he wanted to change. And we got a lot of great insights, but it's just like people are ready and willing to help you. And you can like gain a lot from talking to people. You just have to kind of like, okay, here's what I've heard. Here's my expertise and my background. How can I sort of like disrupt and kind of engage? Engage. Oh my gosh. Anyway, like, like how can you get in there and make some changes? And that's kind of like, how both of our teams are doing. So I hope that, everyone on the call is kind of, I don't know, motivated or, somehow enlightened in a way to just kind of like, if you're thinking about pursuing something, like just do it. And I can put my email down. I'm always down to talk. I'm always down to talk to new founders. If you have an idea or if you have advice for Tolu and I, like, please give it to us. We'll set up like a, I don't know, like a Google form advice for endearing eyewear.
I just want to add, I do have an old high school friend. I haven't spoken to him in like a decade, but he is Ghanaian and he started an eyewear company, and I think he's back in Ghana, and they're like wooden frames. So I'm happy to send that resource over. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yes, please do. Yeah,
Please do.
So our business email is here. And then my personal.
And we have 2 more quick questions in the chat. I can read them for you really quickly. So first question is, have you thought about how you reach your base, not just online marketing?
How we'll reach our base? Is that what you
Yeah,
Yeah,
said?
like
like
our
other
target.
ways other than online
Your
marketing.
community.
Yeah. I feel like in our initial, which is, we still haven't tested this part yet, but like the actual downstream distribution and like, customer acquisition step, I feel like for us will be a lot of, just being in the right place at the right time. So like, being in stockist or like in the place where our, like essentially finding the place where your target person will be and, making sure that you're there and represented in like a very good light. Especially because we're doing, eyewear. There are stockists in all over, every state. There's maybe some, like little eyewear deserts, but for the most part, you will be able to find glasses in a place to actually obtain your product somewhere. So a lot of that is just figuring out where our people are going to be, and then targeting those places and figure out what we need to do to actually get into those spaces, which is, I think for us is a little bit down the line.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just about being in the right place at the right time, and also making sure that your business thesis or like what you're actually doing is unique enough that it will be able to, kind of cut through the noise of like everything else that's going on. Because word of mouth is like one of the most, important like ways to access people.
Yeah. And I think too, like we wanted to target Black individuals who were always wearing glasses, like whether it's just like full time, you need reading glasses, or you just need them to see. So we had like this great idea to just like get on LinkedIn and find these like Black professional groups and just like look at their profile picture. Like, are they wearing glasses in their profile picture? I'm gonna message them and see if they want to talk to me. So it's just like, stuff like that, like cold DMing, I guess, and then just being out about in the city. Tolu and I went to Curl Fest, which is like a natural hair festival. Where was it? Was it in the Bronx? Where
It was
were we?
on Randall's Island.
Randall's Island. And we just saw people with like cool glasses and we were like, hey, like, where'd you get those? Just like, making it casual conversation and not coming up like, hi, I'm a student with my notepad, like, so like you're trying to make them feel comfortable and want to tell you about their experiences. And people are like, I mean, it's an odd question, like, hey, tell me about your glasses. How do they fit? Like, it's an odd question, but like, I think for our community members, most of them were having the issue. So they were happy to talk about it, and give us some insights.
I have a question. Oh, no, sorry. There's another question first, Justina, or do you want me to jump in and read it?
Up to you. We can read
I
the
guess
question.
I'm here. Ideally, if you could build a team, what are 5 specialties you would want to have as prerequisites to having conversations around funding with investors or applying with grants? If you could build a team.
Oh, can I answer that one first and then have these folks? So you're seeing it already. You've seen the prerequisites here. The prerequisites are fearless emailing, relationship building, envisioning, design and prototyping, the ability to let go of perfection, the ability to find folks that are outside of your expertise, the ability to make progress between meetings. These are the prerequisites. These humans represent what you need to start having conversations about getting any kind of funding.
Yeah. I would also add like having someone on your team that is has a background, maybe not a background in writing, but is like pretty good at writing. Like I'm a freelance writer, and a researcher. So like being able to find these like random grants places and being able to like write a proposal or write a grant essay, something like that has definitely helped us in being able to like convey the more like cultural side of our venture, but then also like how this is, a medical necessity, like I said before. So definitely like if writing is not your strong suit, get yourself like a little copywriting textbook, just to make sure everything sounds correct. AI can be a little.
Don't use ChatGPT for this stuff.
But you can pop it into ChatGPT and see like where, you could, expand or kind of get rid of the fluff and just see, how this sounds before you send it off somewhere. And then just like pay extra attention. Like if you're, like applying to grants, you don't have like a specific grant person for this, that, and third. Just make sure you're reading the questions thoroughly so you're not like repeating yourself or, copy and pasting this template in the wrong place, like that is an immediate X when you're applying for grants. But yeah, just that's like an additional thing, like, you know, making sure that your writing is clear, concise, but then also like conveys what you need.
I was just pointing to Kari because, like Tyler's so right. You need someone who's also going to get those grants, who's going to find those grants. And I was not that person. With Kari, she's just like, I don't even know how you do it, Kari, but she's like constantly sending us grant opportunities. And I'm like, wow, there really is a lot of funding available, but you have to find it and you have to apply. And that's two of her great strengths, like finding them and executing the applications. So
Yeah, I guess sometimes I don't know, like I work for the nonprofit world for quite some time. And I did like grant writing there. So I had already some training how to just like chase those, but then it would I realized that if we don't make the time, it will be very hard to do that. So sometimes it's just like finding a lot of things, but like the reality is that we don't have the bandwidth to apply to all of them, or just like even go through the instructions that sometimes are like huge and you need to go very into detail. So I could say that was something that was great with Nikki too. It's just like we had somehow the flexibility to say, okay, this can be a great idea or not, and then definitely ask for support and go to someone that it's really into these. And I have to say that like Jen and Nita has been such a great support for us. And we could definitely not have gone through all of these without them, and not just in the support of the program, but also how they have been willing to just like give us advice and say it's a great thing that what you are doing, or like how we could just like take a different look into things, because sometimes you need more perspective. Even though if you have like some intuitions, we sometimes are very like I gonna say insecure, but like we have so many doubts because you feel like there are so many other things depending on that. um so yeah, Nia, Jen, thank you. It's been really, really great and helpful. Yeah.
This is a love fest tonight. Thank you, Rebecca. Amazing. All right. So I know this will be recorded and sent out, and these tend to have a super long tail of, you know, people we hear months later, like, that's why I went to the new school, was that video I saw. So I so appreciate everyone for agreeing to have this recorded. I really appreciate folks staying extra. I think we booked this for, well, I don't know what we booked it for, but I'm just so glad we stayed up and answered extra questions. Amazing. Just want to thank you all in this day, in this time, in this world, that you all built these incredible relationships, and that whatever happens next, that it sounds like you've been really kind to each other, and you've really supported each other. And so that's a thing. Really appreciate you doing that. All right.
It was great, you know, meeting the other team, and, you know, Nicolette and Kari. Like it was it was great kind of hearing like what your venture is. I love hearing about the process. You know, I like the context of things. So this was great. Yeah, and I put my email in the chat if anyone wants to, you know, chat afterward, have any questions for me, or if you want me to ask you questions about something. I don't know.
All right, folks, you know where to find us. So thanks again for everyone's time tonight.
thank you, Jen, for having us. And it was a great time meeting you, Tolu and Tyler.
Yes,
Good
you
luck.
guys.
You guys
Thank
are
you.
inspiring.
You too.
All right. Bye, everybody.